month wrap up. This is going to be the last wrap up that I'm going to do. I'm going to stick with, I had put it on my community tab that I'm going to stick with, just individual reviews. So that way they're shorter and not super long. Even though this one here shouldn't be that long because there's only a couple things that I'm going to be mentioning. And then also to remind everybody, I am taking June, July, and August off. So there won't be any videos from me coming out during summer break because of the heat. It's already starting to kind of like warm up right now, and it's hitting toward June, you know. So usually in California, like at least in my area, because I'm not that far away from the beach, June, that's when it kind of starts warming up. It doesn't get super hot, but it'll get warm enough to where you're like, whew, I need a fan, you know? And then like July, it'll be a little bit warmer. August is usually our hottest month, and it could get pretty brutal. And it all depends on the area of like if there's enough water that's hitting, you know, the plants and stuff, because we can get a lot of wildfires, especially if the stuff isn't like managed, which California doesn't tend to do. So, yeah, there are times when it gets really warm and I'm just like, ugh, you know, I don't want to deal with anything. So anyways, the book I ended up finishing, this is a part of the Naga Bride series. This is book, what was it, 7 or 8? Now I have to look on my thing because I can't even remember if this was book 7 or 8. Where is it? I have a list of books. Yeah, this is now book 8. And there's other characters that are going to be, as far as I know, I believe they're going to be introduced into the series, because if you have the paperback books, which I do, it shows a list of all of the Naga names and the, like, what kind of, like, snake they are, whether they're copperhead, diamondback, you know, viper, things like that, you know. So this one here is copperhead, and if you haven't read the series, you definitely need to start with the first book, because this is like a continuous series. So if you start off with like book 4 or 5, you may be a little confused. So it's good to start from the beginning. And this series here I really enjoy because I like the world building, because it takes place in like this post-apocalyptic, you know, years and years humans have not been on Earth. So there was this alien race that kind of came down. They were called lurkers. And they tried to act like, you know, oh, we want to help you humans. No, we end up causing a war. And so we end up finding out a little bit more in this book is that the lurker aliens were doing experiments on humans and snakes. So they end up creating these race of Nagas, which are like half human, half snakes. So the top of them will be more humanoid, and they'll have more humanoid features, and their bottom will be more of a snake. And so they have different clans that they're a part of. Now, Krelix, he was a part of this Copperhead clan. And when a lot of the humans had come down to Earth, because in the last book, there was an explosion. There's huge, like, spaceship called the Dreadnought. I think it was called that. It ended up exploding. And so a lot of the humans ended up escaping from that huge ship in these smaller crafts and ended up landing on Earth. And so they haven't seen Earth. Some of them weren't even born when Earth, you know, when they were, you know, when Earth had to be evacuated because of the aliens. So, I mean, they've never seen Earth, you know. They've never seen it. They've never seen open bodies of water, you know, things like that. So this is very much new to them. And so the Nagas, the males, are in desperate need of females, because a lot of the female Nagas ended up going into hiding, or they died, because breeding with Naga males is very like dangerous. It doesn't work out for them well. So the Nagas end up seeing these human females, and so some of them, you know, got kidnapped, and other ones, I would say, as the series has gone along, the author has pretty much kind of softened some of the snakes, I feel like, because when you read the first and second book, they're definitely more possessive and controlling and stuff. And where now I kind of feel like she's softened up these Nagas a bit, probably because people were complaining and saying, oh, they're too brutal, they're too, like, possessive and stuff. So Krellix, like I said, he had his Copperhead clan. Well, a spaceship kind of came down and pretty much destroyed the area that was his nesting area. And so he doesn't know what happened to his brothers, like, you know, all his other family of Copperheads. And so he was searching for them, but he pretty much figures they're probably dead. And so he ends up, like 6 months before, he ended up rescuing Julia, who is a soldier. Now she's pretty much a former soldier, because she didn't like different things that were happening, you know, within the ranks of like the military and all this different stuff. And so she was like, you know, I probably should just walk away from, you know, all this stuff, this military, because she was basically there to, like, you know, check perimeters and things like that. So it's not like she had like this really super high ranking position in the military. So there are these alien beings out in outer space that humans have been fighting for years, that are called the Kets. And so they're not really dealing with lurkers anymore. They're now dealing with these other alien species out in space. So we don't really see all that stuff. That's more of like out in deep space. So you see other stuff. So the last book, like I said, it took place like on the ship. And so there was all that went down. And then now we got this one here where we're now back on Earth again, which I actually prefer. I prefer them being on Earth and everything. I prefer that over like being on a spaceship and stuff. So this one here, 6 months before, Krellix had saved Julia. She had actually crash landed in one of her ships, and they had, you know, other people there too. And she ended up getting injured. So he ended up carrying her back to the character Zaku. He's one of the earlier Nagas. He's, what was it again? He was the King Cobra. That's what it was. He was a King Cobra. And so Zaku and his mate, Daisy, they, you know, they have mated and they have children and all that stuff. So Julia has been staying with Zaku and Daisy for 6 months and helps to babysit the couple's 3 children. So I said she's a former soldier. She knows, like, she still tries to protect everything like that, but she doesn't consider herself a soldier anymore. But she knows how to use firearms and everything. So Julia decides to leave Zaku and Daisy's home because Naga men keep showing up to their nest because Julia is unmated. And so, of course, the Nagas are like, hey, she's unmated. One of us wants to mate with her so that way they can, you know, have children and all that stuff. They want to mate. And so Zaku has told her that she needs to pick a male who will protect her. He's like basically telling her, like, you need to pick. You need to pick someone. And she's like, who am I supposed to pick? You know, I don't want to. She's like, I don't want to mate, you know, even though she still likes Krellix because he had helped protect her. So she kind of has a little bit of a thing for him, but she hadn't seen him in a while. So she was trying to forget about him. But Krellix ends up coming back because of, you know, Zaku. They have like these things called orbs. And so they tell these orbs to, like, hey, go and communicate with this person. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff that happens in these series. you know, he basically, the orb is telling, you know, Zaku tells the orb, like, hey, go to Krellix and tell him to come here. You know, it's basically almost like a telephone, you know, but they are like information orbs where they have all this different stuff. They tell you different things. And so basically the Nagas, all like most of them pretty much have these orbs, you know, like they had them like when they got out of their, you know, birth and stuff like that, when they gave birth and all that stuff. They came out of like basically these tubes and all that stuff. So Zaku was very, like, obviously protective of his wife, because one of the Nagas that keeps kind of like sticking around is this one called Saga, or Sada. Sada is a boa, and he's very intimidating. And she, Daisy, who's Zaku's wife, she almost got sexually assaulted by a boa. You end up finding out Sada is one of the boa's brothers. So he was looking for his brother, and the brother was the one that had tried to sexually assault her. So he keeps kind of lurking around because he's looking for his brother. And so it ends up coming out that, you know, Zaku was the one that ended up killing the brother because he was protecting Daisy. And so there's that's going on. And then, so Krellix is like, well, since she needs to leave, I could take her to, like, there's these, the humans are, like, getting these colonies started and everything like that. There's little villages and everything. And so they have them kind of, like, barricaded and all that. So he's like, well, I'll take her there, and she could be safe there with the humans. And she's kind of like, I don't know if I'll be safe, you know, especially with like some of them coming down. They may think of her as like the enemy because she essentially defected away from like the military. So that is kind of like bad in their eyes, because you don't run away from the military. You can get in trouble for that, you know. You can get court-martialed and all that kinds of stuff. So so Krellix is like, well, I'll take her there. And so while they're going there, of course, their like connection is kind of getting deeper, where his pheromones and all that stuff is kind of like attracting Julia. And, you know, he's now kind of like getting into that heat, you know, where he needs to mate. So they end up bumping into these humans that had crash landed. What were their names? Olivia, that's what it is. Olivia, Benjamin, and Quentin. They end up crash landing on Earth from the dreadnought that ended up exploding. And Olivia is seriously injured. And Benjamin had lost his brother in the crash. Like, his brother ended up getting killed. There was other humans that were on the ship too that didn't make it. And one of them was Benjamin's brother. And so he's a bit depressed that he lost his brother, because obviously he wants to bury him and everything, but you can't really, because they have to like keep going, because there's other Nagas around and they may not be all friendly and stuff. So we're like, we need to go. We need to get, you know, we need to get you to the area where the encampment is, basically. And so while they're going there, Krellix and Julia end up like going off to like another area and to mate, obviously, you know, because they can't control their hormones anymore. And they kind of go from there. And they kind of treat it as like, well, it will be a one-time thing. And I'm like, Krellix, if you know your mating thing, there's no way you're going to be able to handle like a one-time thing. So, after they rescued the humans, like Olivia, she's like a teenager, but I'd say she's higher teenager, probably around 16, 17, around there. So they end up rescuing them, taking them to the encampment where the humans are. And so Krellix basically ends up dropping off Julia. Now, he's obviously kind of like hiding more of his feelings. He obviously has more deeper feelings for her than he's tried to show, because, you know, he's deeply attracted to her. And so he ends up, of course, they drop off Julia and the other humans at the settlement. And for about 20% or so of the book was having her like sneak into different areas. But she also was sneaking around during the book in this underground area. And she ended up coming across all of these like Nagas in these tubes, like in these things. It kind of remind me of like if anybody's ever saw, what was it, Alien 3 or something like that, where you see all of these like testing areas where it showed like they were trying to experiment with like humans and aliens and different things like that, and it was really fucking weird. And so Ripley ended up like destroying the area, you know, because she was like, how could they do that, you know? So it's basically what the lurkers were doing with the humans and snakes, is they were trying to do like these hybrids. And so she's like, okay, well, I'm going to just destroy this area because this technology just shouldn't exist. And so she basically destroys the stuff. Well, what happens is she ended up waking up these Nagas, these newborn Nagas. And so some of them were like basically eating each other or trying to kill like other humans and stuff. So they had to fight them. And so Krellix ended up dropping her off, and he ended up coming back. Like, he ended up staying in the area because he was like, he wanted to make sure she was safe. But I'm like, dude, you were so far gone. So they ended up having to fight these new Nagas that were like kind of smelly because basically they were in these tubes for how many years and stuff, you know, with whatever chemicals and stuff. So they end up having to fight them. So it basically introduced you to like these new characters. And there was this other one that was like Nepesh, something like that. And I was like, well, that's not a character. That was something that Naomi Lucas had come up with her snakes, you know, with the Nagas, the original ones. And so I'm like, this is obviously a new character. And I'm thinking to myself, is she going to like introduce more of the males? Like, you know, maybe eventually this one here will end up getting like, you know, a mate. Or is she going to have it to where like side characters, you know, where you'll end up finding out like, oh, this one mated with this one, but you don't like see their love story, you know? So I'm wondering if that's going to be the case. But it's a lot that goes on in these books. So there's a lot of different backstory that you have to talk about in here. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens in these books, and you really need to like read from the beginning, because throughout the story you're getting introduced to more and more things. Because Zaku, he's like one of the original ones. Like, he was in book 2, Zaku and Daisy. He is living in one of these houses that's more of like technology housings. And so the technology still works. So, you know, you'll have like these repair robots and things like that, stuff like that. So he has these repair robots, but he also has this machine that helps with healing. And so that's how he was able to help Daisy. Daisy ended up getting burned, and so he ended up putting her in this like healing tube, this chamber, whatever it is. And she ended up, like, most of her burns ended up healing because of it. And because I think she's like a former pilot, I think Daisy's a former pilot. And then you have all these other ones, these other females that have come along, and they're, you know, they have different jobs too. Like I said, this one here, Julia was a former soldier, so she knows combat, she knows how to fight, she knows how to use weapons, different things like that, different machinery, stuff like that. So she has her kind of skill set. And then some of the other ladies, they have their skill set. So they all pretty much are trying to get like these things going for themselves, like having their little nests with their families, but also trying to get more things going for the planet to kind of help build up Earth a little bit better, to where they could survive better than what they've been surviving. And of course, more humans coming there, you know, now there's like, you know, more mating opportunities for the Nagas and everything like that. So there is that. But I ended up giving it like a 3.5 because of the fact that Come on. I'm trying to get into my notes. Because of the fact that, like I said, once he dropped her off, there was like a little bit of the storyline, like at least 20%. I was like, I'm bored. I'm bored with what's happening here. Because there ended up being like an uprising in their settlement area and people shooting each other. And, you know, one of the commanders who was running it ends up getting shot. And so it's a lot of different stuff was happening. And so it kind of like started to drag a bit. And so that's why I ended up giving it like a 3.5, because I'm like, this is dragging a little bit. It was making it a little boring for me. It took me like, I'd say it took me like how many, like over a week, definitely over a week to read this book, because it was dragging a bit. So I ended up finishing that. I'm going to delve back into, because I took a break from Project Hail Mary. I'm going to delve back into that one and read some more chapters of that, and probably take a little break on my Kindle for a little bit, maybe a few days or so, just to see if I could try to get through a little bit more of Project Hail Mary, which I am enjoying, but it's the science part that's a bit like, whoo, you know, like over my head. But I am enjoying it, because I definitely want to see the movie, because I love Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling's one of my favorite actors. He's fucking hilarious. I love him. He is so funny. He is so funny. He's what made Barbie bearable. I absolutely hated the Barbie movie, but all the Kens, with the exception of Alan, I did not like Alan. I don't know what it is. I hate Michael Cera. I fucking hate him. I hate him. I don't know what it is about Michael Cera. I hate him as an actor. I cannot stand Michael Cera. But I love Ryan Gosling. And so anything with Ryan Gosling in it, I'm watching it. Like, I need to watch Drive again. That's been a while since I've seen it. That one was a brutal movie. But it's been a while since I watched that one. But I love Ryan Gosling. So anything that he's in, I'm like, I want to watch it. Yeah. The only thing I have not seen is I haven't watched La La Land, which it looked kind of weird to me. But yeah, I love him. And so he's funny. He makes me laugh so much. And so I wanted to see Project Hail Mary with him in it. And so I'm like, I need to finish off the book. I want to try to finish off the book first before I see the movie. Because that's what I've been trying to do lately, is reading the books before I delve into the movies. Even though The Martian, I ended up watching the movie before I read the book. I have the book on my Kindle, and I do need to read it because I want to see like what did they like leave out of the movie. But I really liked that movie. I thought it was pretty good. You know, he survives on potatoes. You know, I'm like, well, honestly, they are like the most nutritious. If you're gonna survive on that, yeah, you're gonna do okay. They're pretty nutritious. So yeah, I need to finish off Project Hail Mary. I'll probably finish that off sometime this summer. Hopefully maybe in June I'll finish it off. Try to push myself to finish that one. It takes me longer for physical books to get through. It's easier for me for a Kindle because, as I said before, I can up the size for my font. It makes it easier to read. So yeah, I'm going to finish off that book hopefully in June. And I'll still do reviews. I'll still do my reviews on my Goodreads and all that stuff. But I'll probably post like reviews on my community tab if anybody's curious, like, you know, for anything in June or July or August I read, I'll post it on my community tab. So this one here I ended up finishing, Love in the Clouds. This one here can be a little complicated because this is a fantasy and it deals with a lot of fantasy elements, but I did really enjoy this show. I did like the actors that played, you know, love interests and stuff. Love in the Clouds characters are Ming Yi. She's AKA, she goes by Ming Xian as her male disguise, and Jai Bozai. So I said Ming Yi has been disguising herself as a male known as Ming Xian to fight as a warrior, but she is defeated by Jai Bozai which leaves her weakened of her spiritual veins by some kind of poison called heavenly grief. So she disguises herself again, but this time as a dancer at a place called Moonlit Blossoms, to try and get close to Jaibozai to give her an antidote. But if she doesn't receive the antidote, she will die within the year. Meanwhile, Jaibozai has been looking for the murderers of his master. Even though Mingyi is staying with Jaibozai, he keeps her at a distance and he doesn't trust her. The more time they spend together, the closer they become. Jaibozai is known to have this elixir called Golden Millet Dream. And there are many people who would like to get their hands on this elixir because the only clan of people who had the recipe for it have died. So Golden Millet Dream is highly sought after. Also, there is someone who is fueling these nether beasts down in the sunken abyss, as they're using people as miners, like people to like mine the area, and then they kill how many people and use their essence or spirit to feed these nether beasts to get them stronger. So before I go into my thoughts, I'll kind of explain a little bit more about like the different stuff. So they have these different families from these different cities that have, you're either born with this thing called spiritual veins, which is essentially like this flower on your skin. And so it gives you certain powers, like certain healing powers, different things like that. And so you can go and fight in these like battles, which kind of reminds me of like what the Greeks used to do with like their Colosseum fights and stuff like that. Kind of reminds me of that, where these people fight in these like battles, and whoever wins that battle ends up getting their city or whatever it is, their village ends up getting this like rain that comes down, which is better for their area, helps out their area, brings in more like farming and different things like that. So it makes things good for their area if they win. So I think it's like every year or so they have to go into like battle and all that stuff. So because she was born a girl child, her mother told her, which there's a backstory to that one. I don't want to mention that. There's a backstory. I'll just say that her mother told her, because you were born a girl, you have to pretend to be a boy, to fight in these battles. So for years she's been pretending to be a male because she's using this cloaking stuff, And so Jaibozai ends up defeating him, her, ends up defeating her. He thinks it's a male. And so she, like a few months later, she's working at this, like I said, the place, what was it called again? Moonlit Blossoms. And it's basically this place where all these like fairies and all that stuff go to, and they dance and they try to entertain all the different people. And so she's doing her best to kind of like get him to notice her. So he ends up noticing her, and she does, it's really silly, like the stuff that she does. He ends up noticing her, and he kind of uses her as a way of like kind of like getting the fairies away from him, because the other fairies, they kind of like, are being pushed to like go to his home, where his home is, and he like doesn't want anybody there. So he's like, oh, well, this is my lady, and he ends up pretending that Mingyi is his lady. And so he kind of treats her as like at a distance because he doesn't fully trust her, which understandable, especially because she's the one that she thinks that he was the one that gave her that heavenly grief, that like poison. She thinks that he poisoned her at the beginning. And so the longer she's hanging out with him and like almost like protecting him, the longer she realizes, well, she has feelings for him, and realizes that no, he wouldn't have did that. So now she's like trying to figure out like who was the one who could have poisoned her, and all that stuff of the heavenly grief. And so now she's lying to Jaibozai and, trying to act like, that she has feelings for him. And then she starts to develop feelings for him, but she's still lying, And so once he finds out that she was lying the whole time, of course, he's like heartbroken because he started falling for her and all this different stuff. So, now they have to navigate that, And so all this different stuff happened. It definitely was more emotional than I was like anticipating it to be. And there was like several times I was like crying watching the show. But I liked the actors. I thought the main actors were really good. I thought the one who played Jai Bazai, I'm not going to say the actors' names, but you know, the one who played him, he was very cute and pretty. He was very pretty. And I liked him, and I definitely would like to see like more stuff with him in it. And I liked the heroine too. I liked her. So because this show was about 36 episodes. 36 episodes, it kind of dragged a little bit. So I said I enjoyed this show, but I did feel like there were times the show was slow and lingered in some secondary characters' lives too long. I only really cared about the romance with Ming-Yi and Jai Bazai. Also, there was another character in the show, Chao Yan, who was absolutely obsessed with Ming-Yi. He knew her briefly when they were children. He was bullied by his family for being born without spiritual veins. So he was looking for the golden millet dream to take so he could obtain spiritual veins. But because Ming-Yi wasn't interested in him romantically, even though he had a fairy there who was obviously into him, this woman who was right by his side definitely loved Chao Yan. But he was so obsessed with Ming-Yi. It was just sickening. And I was like, dude, you have a fairy right here who obsesses over you, who loves you clearly, but you cannot see past your own obsession with Ming-Yi, who has nothing to do with you. She doesn't want anything to do with you. Even if she didn't love Jai Bazai, Ming-Yi would have thought of him as like a brother. And that's like the kiss of death, you know? So he couldn't see past his own obsession and deep insecurities to notice her in a romantic way, you know, that fairy. You know, like I said, his obsession with Ming-Yi. I felt bad for her, but in the end, his character made some bad decisions and he paid for those decisions. As there were parts in the show that were heartbreaking, especially knowing more about how Jai Bazai was born and how he grew up. Oh man, his backstory felt so bad for him. So bad for him because there was a lot of things that went on during his birth that caused him to be, to grow up in like, be thrown in down in the not heavenly grief, but the sunken abyss. And he grew up basically in a sunken abyss. And he was dying when he managed to escape from there how many years later. And this woman had come along that has powers and ended up like healing him and ended up creating, she was part of the family that would create that golden millet dream. And so you have to do all this stuff to make it and all that stuff. And so she only had like a vial left and she gave it to him and was telling him, hang on to this, you know? And so you end up finding out more of the backstory of like how she came to find him and all this difference. Oh, it's so heartbreaking. I felt so sad for him because of all the stuff he had went through. And then on the other hand, you know, Ming-Yi growing up and her, you know, having to pretend to be a male and all this different stuff and her not feeling like she has this like real connection with her mother. You know, her mother kind of like put her at a distance and everything like that. So you end up knowing more about the backstory of that one too. And like I said, I don't want to give too much away and like do spoilers. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I liked seeing like them as a couple, of them getting to know each other and all these little things. It was cute. But yeah, there was some heartbreaking things. And the ending kind of reminded me a little bit of Star Wars because Chao Yan ended up going from this character where you're like, well, can we trust this person, to like being a villain. And it's like, it kind of reminded me a bit of like Anakin going to the dark side. It kind of reminded me of that. So I was like, this kind of reminds me a little bit of like Star Wars. I don't know if that's what they were going with it, but it was interesting. And so some things were a bit confusing. Like it took me how many episodes to kind of like, oh, okay, let me write this down. Heavenly grief, sunken abyss, you know, all this different stuff. But I felt really bad for like the people who were forced doing into that forced labor. And a lot of them were killed, to be used as, fuel for these nether beasts. And these nether beasts were like these creatures that were down in like the sunken abyss. And like I said, the humans were basically used, their essence, their life, you know, their soul was basically consumed by these nether beasts. And so you can end up controlling the nether beasts, but it could end up controlling you as well. And so there were times that they were dealing with that. They were dealing with these nether beasts. And you have this person who was trying to rise up the nether beast so that way he can have control of like the kingdom and all that different stuff. So bad people doing bad things and good people trying to defeat the bad guys, basically. And it was interesting. It was an interesting show. That's for sure. I am in between. Right now I'm watching this other one called Love Between Lines. I've only gotten a couple episodes into that one. That has to do with like virtual reality games and stuff like that. And this woman meeting this guy in the game, and she really likes the guy. And so she ends up like discovering him in real life and everything, and all the things that go on with there. So this is an interesting show. So I've been watching that one. And so I'll end up probably doing a review of it later on, maybe like in the fall. I'll end up doing a review of it. It'll be like a you know, my own review. And then I'm watching this other one called Dynamite Kiss, and it's funny. I really like it. And it has the same actress in it, where I was watching this other show called Genie Make a Wish, and it had that same actress in it. And I loved her. I loved that character, and I loved the actress. So when I saw that she was in this one here, Dynamite Kiss, I'm like, ooh, I need to watch this one. She's so sweet. She's so pretty. I love her. I love her. I love the actress. And I was like, oh, I want to watch everything that she's in. I love her. She's just so cute. So cute. And I love her acting. And I just think she's a good actress. I like her. I like her a lot. And then the male in here of Dynamite Kiss, I love him too. He's so cute. He's so cute. And just, I love his like facial expressions. They're so funny. He makes me laugh. And like, she kind of gets the best of him in certain situations, you know? And just when like, he like thinks that she's married and stuff like that, has to do with her job. He thinks that she's married and like she lied to him. And so he's mad at her. And so he's trying to get the best of her, and she keeps like doing the best of him. And he just gets so, he gets so mad at like her besting him. And then like if something happens, like there was a scene where there was like this campfire where this tent was on fire. And so he thinks she's in the tent, and he's just like, oh my God. And he's trying to like, you know, fan the flames and kind of get her out and everything. He's freaking out, even though he's supposed to hate her, you know, he's freaking out because she could be in there. And he obviously is like in love with her. And, so she ends up coming out, and she ends up using like this, you know, fire extinguisher, and he's just like hugging her because he's so like happy that she was not in the tent. So that was just one scene of like him like trying to rescue her. And there's like going to be obviously other things that happen to get them closer and everything. But it's a cute story. Like I am enjoying it so far. I think I'm only on like maybe episode 3 or 4, something like that. I think I might be on episode 4. And this one here isn't as long. This is not as long series. I think that one, the Love Between Lines, I think that one's a longer series. I think it's a little bit longer. But the ones that kind of tend to be more of like between 35 episodes and 40 episodes, sometimes they can kind of like linger a little bit in certain areas where it's like, oof, maybe this would have been trimmed up a little bit better. Or maybe just don't make as many episodes, you know? But the Dynamite Kiss, I believe that one only has like 16 episodes. I think that was made for Netflix, I think. Usually the ones that are made for Netflix are usually shorter. And the ones that were made for other ones, and then maybe Netflix acquired them for their licensing for a little bit, those ones tend to be a little longer. So I figured I'll probably get through Dynamite Kiss pretty quickly once I can, you know, kind of like binge watch it a little bit more. Then I'll probably get through that pretty quickly. And I'll probably end up doing like an individual review of that one too, like when I come back. So I'll probably end up doing that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. As I stated before, I've been trying to like go slower with my reading, taking my time a little bit longer with books, and trying to delve more into like my Asian dramas, you know, whether it's a comedy or it's, you know, a drama or fantasy or whatever it is. Anything that looks interesting to me and I want to check out. I go more for the ones that have romantic themes in them because I know I like my romance. But I will check out other ones. Like there's this one that was recently put on Netflix called The Wonderfools, and it looks hilarious. I want to watch it. I love Asian humor. I think it's so, they're so funny. They make me laugh so much. I've been finding a lot more human in Asian humor, Asian dramas lately than I have with like Western American stuff. You know, like, what was it? There was that Current Roast with like Kevin Hart, and I was like sitting there and I kind of chuckled at maybe a few people, but the rest of it was boring. I was like, I wasn't laughing at all, you know, and I wasn't offended either. I just didn't think their comedy was funny, you know. The only ones I'd say that I didn't mind was it Cheryl Underwood or Cat Williams was okay. He does better with his stand-up. His stand-up is hilarious. But some of the other people, I was like, they're not funny, you know? They're not funny. Yeah, I didn't find some other people's roasts funny. And like, I don't know what it is with roasts lately. They just don't seem funny. I don't know. I just don't find the humor funny. Even if it's offensive, like I don't mind offensive, you know, offensive doesn't bother me. But it's just like, I don't know. I just don't know what it is. But I haven't found a lot of things funny lately when it comes to Western media. Anything that's made in America, I just haven't found funny or interesting. And I'd rather just delve into like either anime or delve into like Asian dramas or K-dramas. You know, like K-dramas are funny. I like K-dramas. Anything that's Chinese, Japanese, whatever it is, you know, Korean, Philippines, whatever it is, whatever country it comes from, I find their entertainment, their media a lot more entertaining, you know, than stuff that comes out from like Western, you know. But yeah, that's pretty much it right now. I hope everybody has themselves a good summer. And I know I will, because my children will be off from school and I could sleep in and and I can, you know, go out and go have a good time with my kids and go to like museums and different stuff like that. So I'm saving right now for an amusement park, to go to an amusement park next year. So I'm saving money. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope everybody has themselves a good summer. Whether, you know, whether you work or maybe you have the summer off, like maybe you're a teacher and you have the summer off, you know, that's always a good time. But yeah, have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other, and I will see you all on the next video sometime in September. All right. Bye.